people, how are you doing? I hope you're having a damn good day. Welcome back to the channel, and today we'll be talking about Nottingham Forest's set of tactics under Steve Cooper. Now, you guys don't understand how hard it was to watch these different games and try and get these tactics, because last season especially, Steve Cooper used apparently 23 different formations, lineups, tactics, everything. So, we've gone with just a basic 3-4-1-2 or a 5-2-1-2, however you want to put it. But I've got three sets of different formations to go with, as well as their tactics, of course. So stay tuned for that. Smash the like button down below if you would like. Subscribe if you are new to the channel. And more importantly, guys, we're about to hop on into this. I hope you guys are having a great day. Let's get on into it. So as you can see at the top, we've got Taiwo Awoniyi, who I really rate quite highly, along with his strike partner, Brennan Johnson. Just behind them, we've got Kieran Gibbs-White. We've got Mangala, Danilo, Aina, and of course we've got Serge Aurier as the right wing back. Of course we've got Captain Joe Worrell, we've got Felipe, we've got Niakate, and then of course we've got Turner, the new goalkeeper, of course. Then we've got Wood, Dennis, Freuler, Williams, Hennessy, Montiel, and Bali on the bench. And then in the reserves we've got Yates, McKenna, Kuyate, Shelby, and then a few others. I mean, to be honest, I do rate Omar Richards. He is fantastic. It's just a pity he hasn't really worked out the way he was supposed to. I know at QPR, or was it at Reading? I get confused between the two. But before he got his move to Bayern, I know he was tearing up the championship. And then, of course, we've also got Elanga. By the way, I've made him in the game because I thought that the actual in-game face was terrible. So I've gone ahead and made him. I will link it at the end of this video for you guys to go and check out if you would like to, obviously. So yeah, there are a few other players here that I just do not care to talk about. So yes, as you can see here with the formation, it's the 5-2-1-2. Two strikers up front, one cam, two central midfielders, two wing backs, three centre backs, and of course one goalkeeper. So with the Steve Cooper's set of tactics, of course, I didn't really know what to go with, because there are times when the team does press, and then there are times where they just sit back, stay off, and everything. So I've gone with a more balanced approach, and that means that the team will look to try and press the opposition once they get into the middle of the field, where it's more or less any holds barred, fair game, fair tackle type situation. So I've gone with that to try and replicate a realistic approach. I have seen that, you know, they won't always look to try and press the back line. Of course, it is just two players up front. You don't want to overcommit to too many players, because that leaves you defensively weak. So they try and, you know, wait for the opposition, draw the opposition out, draw them into the middle of the park, and then they'll look to try and hit the intense press on the opposition's midfield, their attack, of course. And then, of course, with the width, it's set to 55, which more or less tries to maintain the shape of the team. Of course, it is a nice wide spread out team, so it will look to try and, you know, maintain that shape, but also it does create 1v1 situations with more players trying to, you know, lock each other up, opposed to having a more of a zonal approach in the middle of the park especially. And then as for the depth, it's set to 40, which is a very low block, you could say. Of course, you are playing with three centre-backs. Your wing-backs, you do need to more or less have them in control at times. You don't want them bombing on too far forward, which they do tend to do from time to time. So having a nice 40 depth does try and counteract that as best as possible, and keeps your defensive shape, most importantly. It keeps it intact, of course. And then as for the build-up play, it's set to fast-paced build-up. We've seen numerous occasions where Nottingham Forest will look to try and counter-attack the opposition, collect the ball deep, and then burst on forward. I mean, the Arsenal game, off of a corner, I'm pretty sure it was, Elanga picks up the ball, gives it into Awoniyi back into Elanga, fast-paced down that left-hand side, and then back into the box for a goal. So it is going to be a very big element of your game plan and gameplay throughout the course if you are using these tactics. As for the chance creation, it is set to forward runs, so the likes of Johnson, Awoniyi, and sometimes it will be the likes of Morgan Gibbs-White. They will look to try and make those forward runs, but more times than not, you do want to give the ball to Morgan Gibbs-White deep, let him drive on forward, and then work his magic going forward, of course. And then as for the width, it's set to 70, so it's going to be a nice widespread midfield. Of course, that midfield four, essentially, of course, your two wing backs are included in that. You want them nice widespread out to collect and receive passes, and also to potentially spray passes in. But more importantly, they do fire a lot of crosses into the box. I mean, Serge Aurier does a really good job at just being able to pick out Taiwo Awoniyi in the box, or whoever. I mean, the game against Sheffield United, for example, that 3-minute goal, that was all down to the likes of a great wing back play from Serge Aurier, whipping it into the box early, and then Taiwo Awoniyi just absolutely bullying the opposition in that situation. As for players in the box, though, it is set to 3, so it'll be your main 3 front attacker players up front. So Awoniyi, Morgan Gibbs-White, and of course Johnson. So they'll be in and around that area, but they're not going to look to overcommit. And of course, you will have at least 2 or 3 players in and around the box to try and collect the ball if it is headed out, and more or less recycle it into your fullback situation, where they will look to try and cross it back into the danger area, you could say. And then as for crosses and free kicks, it is set to 4. So just starting off with the goalkeeper, of course, with his set of instructions, I've set Turner to be a bit more cautious with his crosses. That means he will try and stay on his line as much as possible. And of course, when you are playing a very low block, you don't need your keeper to be a bit of a sweeper keeper or anything like that. You do have those 3 strong centre-backs in front of him to more or less protect him more times than not. And from the games that I did see and the clips that I have seen of Turner at the likes of Forest, he hasn't been the sweeper keeper that runs out, or he hasn't been super aerially dominant where he comes and claims crosses. More times than not, he'll look to try and punch or hold his line and try and save the shots on goal. And then slightly moving forward, we've got our 3 centre-backs there, so it's their base set of instructions going forward. And then moving on slightly higher up the field, we've got Aina and Aurier. They are set to the same set of instructions: join the attack and overlap, and of course step up. So you do want them to be playing high and wide. They are going to be more or less that out there ball. If you want to try and hit a long diagonal, they will be in space more times than not, or of course switch the play. So more times than not, you want them being as aggressive as possible, bombing on forward, helping the likes of Awani Johnson and Morgan Gibbs-White to try and get forward. Of course, they will be supplying them with the very good, hopefully good, attacking balls that you will be crossing into the box for them. And then, of course, we've got our midfield duo here, Danilo and Mangala. So we'll start off with Danilo, of course. He is set to stay back while attacking, get into the box, of course, normal interceptions, stick to position, and then, of course, cover the wing. Now, I did note that Danilo does get forward. I know that. So what you would have to do is, as you're controlling it, is you would more or less have to force him to get forward with having him on the ball and him driving forward a bit more. So I do know that he does get forward and he does hang in and around the box, and that therefore Mangala will drop deeper. But in this situation, I've gone with Mangala to be the more adventurous, deep-lying midfielder that does get forward. So as for speaking of Mangala, he is said to have a more balanced attack, stay on the edge of the box, aggressive interceptions, stick to position, and of course cover the wing. So it's a nice dynamic approach to have for one of your central midfielders, of course. And then slightly further on in the field, we've got Morgan Gibbs-White. He's set to come back on defense, get into the box, of course, drift wide, and then normal interceptions. Now, like I said earlier, he does look to try and drop deep, collect the ball, and then drive it at the opposition backline. And more times than not, he does a very, very good job. His ball carrying ability is so underrated in the Premier League. Like, honestly, he is a really good player when he's got the ball at his feet and he's able to dictate the pace of play. And of course, you do want him to get in the box, having another attacking player in that area to try and, draw players off of the likes of Awani and Johnson, and then drift wide. So we have seen in the past where he does look to try and drift into that left-hand area. Of course, it is more times than not left vacant because, of course, Johnson looks to, more or less occupy that right-hand side, whereas Awani tries to be the central focal point. So we will see the likes of Morgan Gibbs-White drifting into that area from time to time. And then speaking of Johnson, his set of instructions are set to drift wide, getting behind, of course, normal interceptions, and then, of course, balanced defensive support. So you do want him to, like I say, drift into that right-hand side, more or less draw players off, stretch that defensive backline so that it does take off a lot of pressure on the likes of Awani, who is said to have a balance width. So he will also sometimes look to drift wide, but more times than not, he will look to try and have that central channel occupied all to himself. He's also going to be set to target man. Of course, you want to fire balls into him, have him collect the ball, and then potentially ping it off to either Morgan Gibbs-White or a Johnson, or maybe even your fullbacks in that situation. But more importantly, he is going to try and be the focal dominant point in the box when you're firing in those crosses. He's very, very good with headering, of course, we have seen against Sheffield United. And then, of course, he's set to normal interceptions and then stay forward. So he will be your focal point going forward. Just want to have some coffee. God. Look how strong I made this. Oh my god. And then for the second set of instructions, now of course the game plan, it is more or less going to be a 3-4-2-1 or a 5-2-2-1. As you can see here with the formation, that's what we've gone with. Of course, very high, wide wing backs. Of course, we've still got 2 central midfielders, but this time we've got a left and a right winger. So that's the slight differentiation between the two. Now, I will say for this formation, I would more or less use it if you are playing against a weaker team. That way you can have more attacking lanes filled. So when you are looking to try and press them, or you are looking to try and exert attacking pressure on them, you have a bit more of a widespread field and it's not just channeled down the center like the other formation is. So for this set of instructions, I've gone with pressure on heavy touch. Now, this is why I say the back line of the opposition will be looked to be a bit more pressured, hurried on the ball when they do have it, because you have a forward line now that you can look to try and fill those offensive channels. And of course, you do have wing backs that do tend to bomb on and try and, you know, occupy those spaces high and up wide, of course. So that's why I've gone with a pressure on heavy touch. We have seen in the past when they do play a front three that you do see more or less the opposition being hurried on the ball quite a bit. And then as for the width, it's set to 55. Like I say, for the previous set of instructions, it's more or less going to be the same. And then as for the depth, it's slightly higher now, more of a mid-block, you could say. They will be a bit more adventurous. Of course, you're trying to be a bit more attacking with this set of instructions. So that's why I've gone with, you know, the 3 centre-backs they can look to bomb on a little bit higher up the field, of course. And then as for the builder play, it is still set to have a fast-paced builder play. So quick turnover possession, bang, counter-attack, spring the offensive trap on the opposition. I'm getting tongue twisted here, but as you can see here, we've got forward runs set to be on, so you will still see the likes of Awoniyi, Morgan Gibbs-White, and of course Johnson. They will still be looking to make those forward runs, and they will still be looking to be supplied by your wingbacks, which are still set to 70, by the way. Same reasoning for as the last set of instructions. And then as for players in the box, again, it is set to 6. You only want those forward 3 being in that area, attacking the ball, of course, and you do want at least one midfielder and the other fullback potentially in and around that box, and of course the fullback that is crossing the ball. So it's more or less 3 players on the box, 3 players on the edge of the box, waiting to potentially collect the loose balls. And then as for corners and free kicks, as per always, it is set to 4. So as for Matt Turner's set of instructions, it is set to cautious. Of course, you are playing a slightly higher line, but it is still a mid-block, and you don't really need to sweep the keeper or anything like that in that situation. So that's why I've gone with the same set of instructions. As for your 3 centre-backs, they are set to the same set of instructions. As for your fullbacks, of course, also the same set of instructions. As you can see, Aina as well. And as you can see for Danilo and Mangala, they have the same set of instructions, but this time Danilo will look to be a bit more aggressive with his interceptions, trying to win the ball back as quick as possible, create those high turnover rates in the midfield, of course, but he has got the same set of instructions set on. And as for Mangala as well, the same going forward. Now, Johnson, he is set to come back on defense, have a balanced width, getting behind, of course, and then, of course, get into the box. So he will look to try and occupy that space as well. He is going to be a right winger, just like Gibbs-White will be a left winger, but they, of course, are going to be a bit more narrow, a bit more central, in and around the likes of Awoniyi. They'll look to try and have the balls flicked onto them, potentially from your big brute force striker. But more times than not, you do want them to have that, occupy that wide area that they will have that space to run into behind. But I have set it to balance because you sometimes do want them to be able to cut inside, interchanging play, have link-up play as well with Awoniyi, creating a bit more fluidity in that front line as well. But as you can see for Morgan Gibbs-White, he's got the same set of instructions going forward. And then finally, Taiwo Awoniyi, he is set to have a slightly differing role this time, but it will be stay central, target man, and of course stay forward. So he will only look to occupy that central area. He won't look to try and run channels. That's why you have the likes of Morgan Gibbs-White and of course Brennan Johnson to do that for him. And then finally, we've got the final set of instructions. As you can see here, very different looking. Not gonna lie, it is fairly different looking. Not really. But you've got a flat back 5, essentially. You've got 2 DMs in this situation. 1 cam that's very, very deep. 1 centre forward in Brennan Johnson. And then, of course, you've got your outlet striker. So as you can see there, we've got 3 centre backs, 1 goalkeeper, of course, 2 fullbacks, 2 DMs. Of course, they're no longer central midfielders. They will look to play a lot deeper in this formation. Of course, 1 cam that is fairly deep. And then, of course, you've got a centre forward to try and help out that cam with getting the ball back and so on. And then, of course, you've got a striker. Now, for this sort of instructions, it's more or less when you're facing the massive teams like a City or an Arsenal who are looking to try and compact you in your box. And more or less what you want to do is you want to try and flood that box with a lot of red shirts or yellow shirts in this situation, if you are playing with as the away team, and you look to try and soak up pressure and then almost hit the counter attack on them as quick and as fast as possible. So the more pressure you soak up, the better it will be for the counter attacking play. As for the instructions and the tactics going forward, it is said to drop back. Of course, you want to try and maintain your shape. You don't want to be a bit too adventurous with the pressing or anything. You're just looking to drop deep, get into your shape, and make sure that you're structurally sound. As for the width, it's very narrow. It's set to 25, and the depth is set to 20, so it's an incredibly low block. You won't need Matt Turner to be running off of his line anytime soon. And of course, the width is nice and structurally narrow, of course. As for the build-up play, it's set to fast build-up as per always, and then the chance creation is set to direct passing. So you will be looking to fire the ball into a Wanye or potentially a Brennan Johnson for them to carry it up the field. You can't just have a long ball being fired in, because it is only 2 players against a potential, 5 or 6 players that the opposition will have in the back line. So you don't want to just fire those long balls in. So you want a fast-paced direct passing build-up. As for the width, it's set to 70. Attacking wise, you can have your fullbacks bomb on a little bit, but they won't look to always do that. And then as for players in the box, it is only set to that front 2 to get in there. You don't want to overcommit too many players, of course. And then corners and free kicks, it is set to 2 as well. Like I say, you don't want to overcommit to too many players and then potentially get counter-attacked on yourself. You are trying to either hold a lead or hold a point, potentially, with this set of instructions and formation. Now, of course, we will be soaking up a load of pressure. So with this set of instructions, I've gone with Matt Turner to have a bit more of an aggressive approach. He's going to want to try and claim those aerial balls, which he can do. We've seen many times at Arsenal. I think it's like 6 times. But more or less, he will look to try and claim balls in the air. Of course, crosses being fired into the box. He will look to try and be a bit more aggressive and assert himself on the game when you have this set of instructions on. As for your 3 centre-backs, they are set to the same set of instructions as per always, but now things change slightly for your fullbacks. They are set to stay back while attacking and then have a mixed attack and then stick to position. So they will not look to try and bomb on as much as you would like. Of course, if you are controlling them and you do have a load of space down that left or that right-hand channel, feel free, bomb on with them and try to supply the likes of a Wanye or Johnson. But more times than not, they are going to look to remain structurally sound. Like I say, with the drop-back system, you will have very little adventurous play going forward. So yes, they are set to stay back while attacking, holding that width defensively wise, making sure that they will try and lock up the opposition winger or fullback if they try and whip balls into the box. And then of course we've got Danilo and Mangala, both set to defensive midfielders. They are set to cut passing and stay back while attacking. Normal interceptions will be on, and then of course cover the center. And as you can see, for Mangala as well, they're creating a nice barrier, nice shield in front of that back 5. And then slightly higher up the field, we've got the adventurous Morgan Gibbs White, but he is not going to have as crazy set of attacking outlets. He is set to have a comeback on defense, stay on the edge of the box. And of course aggressive interceptions, and of course he's going to stick to his position. So he's also going to try and help that midfield 3 in trying to try and foil the opposition's offensive outlet on your team, of course. And then of course you've got Brennan Johnson. He's set to drift wide, getting behind. Normal interceptions will be on, and of course come back on defense. So he's also going to try and help the likes of Gibbs White, Danilo, and Mangala. But also, when you do have the ball, he will try and, stretch that back line, that opposition back line, to try and, have a ball fight in over the top, or potentially have a quick, fast-paced build-up play between the midfield and him. And then, of course, he is going to look to try and supply Taiwo Wanye, who is set to stay central, getting behind, of course. So he's not going to just be a target man. He's going to try and look and run at the opposition. And more times than not, if you are using this sort of tactics, I would advise you probably use Morgan Gibbs White or Brennan Johnson in this situation. Because Taiwo Wanye, he's not the fastest player, neither is Chris Wood, to be fair. So you could even go with an Emmanuel Dennis as the striker in this situation, just to have a bit more pace and flair going forward if you do have the ball for your brief few moments. And then finally, he's set to stay forward, so he will be your outlet ball alongside the likes of Brennan Johnson. So yes, my people, that is the set of instructions I have come up with for Nottingham Forest. If you have enjoyed this video, hit that like button, please. Subscribe if you are new, that would be absolutely fantastic. And of course, guys, until the next time, I hope you have a damn great day. I'm out.